Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. My name is Victoria and today I wanted to talk about the library. So, libraries. Libraries are both a glorious thing and a pit of burning fire. I love what a library is for. I love that it's a place people can go to get out books, to read, without having to have the money to buy them or the space to store them. You just go, you get a book, you issue it, you take it home, you read it, you take it back, and that's it. And it's fantastic, and it's free, and it's amazing that this is a resource that is out there for people. I think it is so amazing that the people who learn about all these hundreds of books that they really want to read don't have to buy hundreds of books in order to read them. It is the most cost-effective way to read because it's free. You know, you can get some good stuff from the library. Personally, up until this year, I did not use the public library. I've always been of the opinion that I wanted to own all the books that I read, and also, I'm not gonna lie, it freaks me out when I see how damaged some of the books in the library are, because let's face it, when hundreds of people are reading the same copy of the same book, it's gonna get a bit gross. It's gonna get discolored, it's gonna get cracked, it's gonna get creased, the pages are gonna be all dog-eared and have mysterious marks and spills on them sometimes. Yeah, sometimes. Sometimes the book seems like it's brand spanking new perfect condition. I guess it depends how popular the book is, really. But it's free. I got a library card earlier this year and for the first time in my adult life went to a public library. I went and I looked around and I got very overwhelmed and I left. And then the other day I went back and I picked up a couple of holds and found a book on the shelves that I wanted to read. That book being Recitatif by Toni Morrison. I probably would never end up with this book in my hands if it weren't for the sake that it was at the library, because the book depository shut down. That was my place to buy books, and I've never seen this book in stores, so I would have to seek it out somewhere else online where it would be more expensive with a shipping cost, and I would just never get around to it. But it was right there in the library, just asking to be read. So I got it out, and I'm gonna read this in this video, but first I wanted to talk about my newfound love of libraries. As someone who creates content on the internet, being able to not have to buy every single book that I need to read for a video is actually very useful, because do you know how expensive books are in this economy? It's chaos. But the fact of the matter is, I can place holds on books at the library, and then when they come in I can get them for the sake of reading them in my video. It is nice. Like, there are some books that I want to read for like one-off videos that I know I don't want to own and I don't really want to spend money on, so I've just placed a hold on the library, and when that book finally comes in I can make that video and I don't have to pay for anything, and it's great and it's fantastic. Getting a book out from the library, I have it for 28 days. That's a long time. I don't think I'll keep any of them that long, but I can keep them for 28 days before having to either renew my issue or return the book. If there's a hold, you can't renew it, obviously. Like, if there's other people waiting for it, then you have to bring it back. But my library is also really good because they don't have overdue fees. So if your book is overdue and you return it, they don't charge you. If the book gets marked as lost because it's been so long without you bringing it back, they will tell you it's been marked as lost, and then if you return it, they retract their missing book fee. So really, there's not a lot of risk involved in my library, at least. The range at my library is very small. There are not a lot of books there. There's a relatively larger children's section that I haven't looked at, but the good thing, and I feel like a lot of libraries do this, my library is a part of a network of libraries that are scattered throughout the city. And if there's a book that I want to read that is not at my branch but is at another branch, if I request a hold on it, it'll get moved from the branch that it's at to my branch for me to pick up and read. So I don't have to drive all around the whole city trying to find all the books that I want to read, which is great. So I'm pretty new to the world of libraries. I think it's sad that I had such a negative outlook towards libraries for so long, because they are so great. I think, you know, the fact that the government does put some effort into providing the general public with access to books is amazing, because money is a huge barrier to a lot of things, especially the way the economy is right now. I own a lot of books. I am very fortunate to own a lot of books and to have been able to buy a lot of books. Going into this year though, I had to really restructure restructure the way that I spend money, because I'm no longer working full-time. I'm going back to university, so my income has drastically shrunk. So I don't have a lot of expendable cash, if you will, to just go out and buy some books. So being able to go to the library and get new books to read that aren't books that I already own is kind of fun. It's almost like shopping without spending money. So when I went the other day, I tried to get some clips, but oh my god, there were so many people in there, and it's actually really a small building, so I felt like everybody could see what I was doing and was judging me. But I found Recitatif by Toni Morrison. I've never read a Toni Morrison. I've heard good things. I know that this is a short story, not a book, but it's been published as a book, so I'm counting it as a book. My understanding is that we follow two women who have known each other since they were children in like a, I want to say an orphanage, girls shelter, and it follows them as they come across each other again and again at multiple points in their lives. And one of them is white and one of them is black, and we don't know who is who. And I'm picking this short story as just a big social commentary. It's going to be interesting to see what kind of assumptions I kind of make around that, which I think is the point of the story, is what do you assume based on the experience? And that'll be interesting, and I don't know if I ever will get an answer, because I don't think we find out. It sounds very interesting. It says this story is a masterful exploration of what keeps us together and what keeps us apart, of race and the relationships that shape our lives. It is as radically compelling and relevant today as it was when first written nearly 40 years ago. So I'm gonna read this, and I'm actually gonna read the introduction at the front as well. I never do that when someone else writes an introduction to something like classics and stuff. I never read that, but I will read it this time because I think that could be interesting. This introduction is written by Zadie Smith. It's like the same length as the actual story, which is a little wild to me. I'm excited to read it. It's the kind of book that, as I said, I would probably never end up with if it weren't for the sake of it being at the library while I was there. So I'm excited to read this and find out just what I would have missed if I didn't have a library card. So I finished it. I will start by saying I read the introduction after I read the short story. The introduction is called Somebody in There After All, and it's by Zadie Smith, who is an author in her own right. So I read the short story first, and then I went back and read the introduction because I thought that this introduction was going to tell me a lot of things that happen in the short story, which it did. So I'm glad that I read the short story through my own eyes, making my own thoughts and opinions and stuff, and then read the introduction and got someone else's. I think this was a fascinating experiment, which is what this story is. That is explained in detail in the introduction. I found it interesting the way that Toni Morrison played with the way we try to categorize people. This whole short story, you do not know which of the girls is black and which of the girls is white, and you're kind of trying to figure it out. And it makes you evaluate how you try to figure that out. There's a lot of stereotyping and problematic things that you're like, is this more black or more white? And then you're like, whoa, I genuinely don't know. There were different points throughout this where I thought that each of the girls were each of the races, you know. I flipped between them both for both of them pretty much the entire way through this short story, which is kind of the point. I think this did a good job of taking a really crucial part of their identities and what has formed their experiences away and leaving behind a whole bunch of other stuff. So we can see, you know, are they poor? Are they rich? Are they high class, low class? Like, we can see all their other standings other than their race. And I think that was very intentional to illustrate how important those other things are too, and also how universal all these things are. We cannot look at either of these girls and definitively say that is a black experience, that is a white experience. These characters are written in a way where you cannot determine that, and it really does show just how anybody can have an experience. Obviously, that is one view of this story. It's not the only thing I took away from this story. I thought it was doing a very good job of making me really critique the way I think of people. I don't consider myself a very judgmental person. I don't tend to make a lot of assumptions or judgments of any kind. So I was really struggling with this because it was almost encouraging me to make judgments on people and to decide their race based on these judgments. And that made me uncomfortable because that's not how I go about my daily life, but it's the fact that we have the ability to do this. Ugh, very discomforting. The introduction was very interesting. It felt very long. The introduction was just as long as the story. I feel like it might have been a few pages different, but wow. I think Zadie Smith had a lot of interesting things to say. I think she came at it with her own perspective, which was good for me to see, and I do think she taught me some things, but I also feel like it didn't need to be as long as the whole story. I very much felt like I was doing university reading this. This is the kind of short story you could write essays about, for sure, and I think it's the kind of short story people should read in school at some point, just for the commentary on social categorization and judgment and racism and assumptions and all of that. I think it did a really good job of really pointing that out to you in a blatant way of saying, hey, you do this. Why? Doesn't actually help you. I think it's an important piece of literature for that reason, for what it discusses and what it does and what it means and what it is. I almost don't want to rate it because I'm like, this doesn't feel like something I should rate. This feels like something I should study. I think I'm gonna give it like a 3.5, which sounds really bad now that I'm saying that out loud. I did enjoy this. I'm not a short story person. I do not read anthologies. I do not read short stories or novellas even. This is not my preferred type of thing to read. I always find short stories are just a little bit too vague. You don't really get in deep with anybody. This definitely makes you think about a lot of stuff, but I just don't really love short stories. That's really all I have against this. So a 3.5 feels pretty harsh, doesn't it? But I rate purely on enjoyment, not on quality. Quality of this is outstanding, but I'm rating based on my enjoyment factor while reading. And unfortunately, I didn't love it. I didn't love the experience of reading it. I really value what it says and what it makes you think about. I think that is super important, and I think more people should read this. And I would definitely be interested in reading more Toni Morrison, because I'm pretty sure this is the only short story, so I think an actual novel might be more my speed, but unfortunately it is a short story and that's not my favorite. So now I'm in an awkward position of giving it a 3.5, which I'm gonna put as a 3 on Goodreads. I don't do rounding. It didn't do anything wrong. I did like it. I think it's a little over my head. I don't feel intelligent enough to discuss this book on any real level. Again, I feel like this should be read in like a class setting or a university setting where you're gonna have big discussions with people. Like, this would be a good book club pick or something where you end up having a big discussion. I think that would add a whole nother layer to this whole experience, but I'm just reading it on my own. And I am so glad that I read it. I would recommend people picking this up because it's a huge thought experiment and it's crazy. I knew it was that thought experiment going into it, but I didn't think it was going to be as effective as it was. And it's such a pretty book. I'm glad it's at the library. I'm glad this has been made available to all the people who frequent the library. I think that's really important. But I'm gonna go to the library now and return the books that I got out so that somebody else can find them and read them and love them, and then they can bring them back and someone else can find them and read them and love them, and the whole joy of what a library is can continue. I'm so glad that I've started going to the library and that I'm accessing free books that are made available to everybody in my community. I think it's fantastic. Books like this are very important to be put in as many hands as possible. So I'm very, very glad this was at my library. And I'm gonna take it back. Libraries are a little piece of hope. That's very dramatic, but I'm gonna say it. I'm gonna stick with it. They provide something to everybody. Whether you access it or not, it is there. It's at your fingertips. It's free. It does give me hope that books and literature and reading is still valued enough by the government to have libraries that are updating their stock. This is a new release. I did not request it. I mean, I say it's a new release. This edition of it was published in 2022, so it's like a couple years old now. It's really good to see that new things are being added to the library and that readers are being encouraged to pick up things like this because it's right there. And I think that that is absolutely amazing that libraries do that, and I'm looking forward to reading more from my library as the year progresses and as my life continues. It really helps your local libraries to get books out from there, so if you're ever able to or looking for a book that your library has, do get it out because it helps them stay open and continue to get funding. Yeah, that's kind of what I wanted to talk about in this video. There was a bit of a review of my library book. I think I've said my piece. Please let me know what your experience with the library is down below. If you love it, please tell all the reasons why. But I'm in my library era now, and I hope everybody else is able to utilize their libraries to the best they can, the best they want to. Seriously, free books is such a game changer. Please leave a like if you enjoyed this video. It does help the channel, and subscribe if you want to see more of my content. I am making some fun videos this year. I'm really excited about them. Lots of reading challenges and stuff. That's all from me today, and I hope to see you all next time in my next video. Bye.